Is Sunyatas Saraswati. Sunyata has studied and practiced the 4 schools of Tantra for over 40 years with masters in India, Nepal, China, Peru, Egypt, and Europe. He has gone deeply into the internal martial arts, various exercise systems, and healing modalities. Sunyata has distilled the essence of these various schools to bring forth a practical system of physical, mental, and spiritual development. Using some of the most powerful techniques known to humankind, it's no surprise that his students experience rapid progress. Sunyata was founder and director of the Rejuvenation Center in Phoenix, Arizona, Beyond New Age Research Center, Hollywood, California, and Kriya Institute of Tantric Sciences, Sedona, Arizona. Currently, Sunyata teaches couples Tantra and writes about the healing arts of China and Tibet from his home in North Carolina. Welcome, Sunyata.
Namaste, how are you?
Just fine. Thank you for coming.
Oh, sure.
I solicited questions from the larger Tantrika community for you to go anywhere you want. And I'll start with the one that seems most appropriate. I would like to know more about Sunyata's lineage, his teachers, where he received his cobra breath, and his devotion to Babaji.
Well, that's a loaded question. In the early days, when I was a young pup, Yogananda came to my grandmother's house, which she's an opera singer, and he plays the harmonium. And he had been in this country twice, in the 20s and the 30s. And then when he met me, he told my grandmother he's a candidate to become a Kriyaban.
What's a Kriyaban?
A devotee of Kriya, yoga. And so he gave me my first initiation called the Hamsa meditation. I think I was about 8 or 9 at that time. We tested third eye, all the things you've been going through. And he told my grandmother that they was going to have problems with me later on in life, because he had this indication that I was going to teach the tantric path instead of just a regular Kriya path, which was right. I guess it's my destiny. And so he sent me to Kriyananda, the Temple of Kriya Yoga in Chicago, where I got my first cobra breath. And as the years progressed, when I learned Hatha Yoga and all these various yogas, then I would elevate myself to the next level until I got to the 4th level. And then it was decided that I was going to go to India to study with Satyananda and his branch of Kriya Yoga. And I went there, and some of the most remarkable experiences that I had, I started having hallucinations.
How old were you at that time?
I was 22, because in those days, you took the spiritual path very serious. That's all you did all day. And I had a lot of hallucinations, seeing the goddesses and the gods and everything. And my teacher, Satyananda, sent me to China. He said, you need to go and learn to ground yourself, because I'm walking in the middle of the street in India talking about these gods and goddesses, you know. They thought I was a loony bin, you know, which I probably was. Then I went to Hong Kong and enrolled at the Wu Chi Dao Temple, where they taught me a different form of Tai Chi that you normally don't see in the Western world. It's Tibetan in nature, and it's a real rooting and healing force. And so this Tibetan nun felt that I would make a good candidate. So she taught me and 2 other guys. And I have found over the years, even with all the martial arts and internal arts I know, that I stick with this form because it is a healing form. For me, I needed it for healing of my emotions. This I know as a fact.
Why do you say that?
I was disjointed, meaning I was trained as a tantric technician. No emotional content at all. So when I got back to the West, I started teaching Tantra, and this was in the 60s. I started teaching Tantra just from a technical point of view.
Is this what Yogananda meant by you would be trouble?
Yeah, he was correct. And as time went by, and I traveled all these various countries learning their tantric systems and modalities. But the Tantric Kriya Yoga technique really advanced me. I could see the benefit of the 4 cobra breaths, which is 7 as a matter of fact, but only gurus can receive the last 3.
How do you get them? And you say gurus, is it through dreams or visions? Or?
Through meditation, yeah. I've been going on from there. You know, I'm semi-retired now. I just teach Tai Chi and a few exercise systems, and every once in a while I get involved with some couples that want to learn Tantra, so I try to spread it to them. I found that teaching singles didn't work for me.
Why is that?
Because they didn't have an emotional cord tied to them. I mean, they could split at any time, but married couples have that binding connection, you know, from the heart to the head. And that's why I decided to work just with couples.
Do you find that couples progress faster?
Yes. The reason they do is because they're more thorough in their practices, they aren't looking for another mate, and they're connected to each other through this etheric cord, as we call it. And that's from the heart and the head. I find it really works for couples.
Many of the techniques you discovered from these traditions were very secretive. How did you gain access to them?
Through permission from other teachers. Every time I went to another country, he had to write a letter explaining my progress to them. And then they would start very gradually opening up to me. It's a protocol.
So you would get a letter of introduction from your former teacher to the next one.
Yeah. And the techniques aren't that secret. People don't know where to look, because all they read is these American books on yoga and Tantra. They don't go back to the source to find out where these techniques originally came from.
So if I were to go to India, they would be more familiar with these same techniques?
Absolutely. There's variations on a theme, naturally, depending on other lineage you come from, but basically clear cut.
Now, you were also taught in the Taoist school.
Yes, I
Tantra.
was.
How is that different from the Indian school of Tantra?
Unfortunately, the Taoists don't work with the emotions.
Really?
They work mostly with their energetic bodies. In advanced classes of Taoism, you work through the 5 emotions, which they relate to as animal spirits. But in the beginning path, it's all learning how to do the microcosmic orbit and things of that nature for your own regeneration and healing. But they very seldom touched upon the real essence of some of the illness I find in the world, and that is our emotional complexity.
Do you feel that the Indian form of Tantra is more appropriate for the West, considering issues with emotions?
Yes, absolutely. The Tibetans are close by, except they go into a more abstract level of working with emotions. But East Indian Tantra, in all its forms, go directly working with Shakti energy to bring up these emotions so you could spit them out. And that's what Tantra means. At least the path I was on is called Varnamark path, the left-hand path. And it means to spit out anything that's not good for you. And Darshinki mark, that's your right-hand path for Tantra. That's the Kriya Yoga tradition.
Why is Tantra described as the warrior's path or the hero's path?
Because it takes guts to do it.
Why do you say that?
It's not for wimps.
Why is that?
They don't have the fortitude, or they think they do, until they're in a workshop and then they fall to pieces.
But what makes people fall to pieces? What is it that they face that is hard to confront?
The emotions, emotionality. I discovered all of this from Bodhi, because she was working with me on that concept. And then we started to incorporate them in our workshops. But I found that so many people think they have it together with their emotions. They don't, especially singles, and that's why I stopped teaching them.
What's the connection between Jesus and Tantra, if there's any connection at all? Because I've done some reading, and his name seems to pop up a lot with Tantra.
There is a connection, because what he taught his disciples, if he ever existed, number one, I'll clarify that first. He taught the Cobra breath from the Egyptian system of Tantra. And that's where he got his knowledge when he became the Christ. So he learned in Egypt, India, China, basically the same techniques with a little modification, but he focused more on working with the divine energy coming in from above. And that's the basic difference. In Tantra, we work from the bottom up, working with the Kundalini Shakti. And he worked from Aten Ra, the sun god. That's the basic difference.
Would we recognize any form of Tantra that is close to the Egyptian the historical Egyptian form today? And does it still exist at all?
It exists in these secret mystery schools. So you would have to either join the Rosicrucians or join another group called the Astarians, and you would learn the Egyptian Gothic method of the cobra breath. I met a girl here about 3 months ago. She was supposed to be a Egyptian tantric priestess, and I went to her introduction. She was out for making money. She transposed all the Egyptian names and